Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're here for Introduction to MATLAB. I'm Heather, and I'm joined with Kevin. I'm joined by Kevin.
Hey, thanks, Heather. My name's Kevin Cohan. Quick introduction. I've been at MathWorks for about 15 years, and I primarily focus on helping people apply MATLAB to solving engineering and scientific problems. And prior to MathWorks, I did a few different things. I did some hardware design in the early part of my career, and I was also an application engineer at a startup as well as Mentor Graphics.
Yeah, Kevin and I are on the same team on the MATLAB product marketing team. I also join in the fun in making examples and videos like this. My background is in physics. My PhD was in physics, and I did a lot of machine learning. So I use MATLAB and a bunch of languages, and I'm really happy to be here and help everyone get started with MATLAB. So, the approach for today, we're going to do kind of an overview and really leave a lot of suggestions for getting started. I think Kevin and I spend a lot of time in MATLAB, so we're trying to pull out the most important things really and leave you with a lot to get you going as you get back to your desk. So, we will talk about the demo in a minute, but I think we wanted to start with some of the main philosophies or really big fundamentals, I think, with MATLAB. And one of them is the documentation, for sure. And I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
many of us would not be where we are without having relied on the doc.
Yeah.
At MathWorks, we have fantastic writers that have backgrounds, just like us in science, engineering. So you can see there are many different things you can sort by what you're looking for. And I think, one thing that people always ask is, how do I get started? What's the best course to take? What's the best thing? Just find an example that is very similar to what you want to do. I think that's, kind of how life works, right? So you
Yeah.
can even sort with the examples, poke through. You can see, gosh, there's 70 in math, data importing, all the different toolboxes. So, I think that's really the place to start is just find an example of what you're looking for, and you'll learn a lot as you go. We're going to be doing some data importing. It's messy, right? So do clean, messy data. That'll
Oh,
be a
yeah.
bit faster.
I like this example.
Yes, this
Yeah,
is.
particularly that one with the tasks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is a great one. So I could just open it in MATLAB. Well, I could just open it in MATLAB online.
Oh,
Let me
yeah.
go back to that because this is I think you don't even need to download anything or install anything. If you don't have a license, yeah, you can just run it in the browser. So you'll have a button here and it'll just open up, the example in the browser. If you do have a license, like we do, it'll open up in a full version of MATLAB Online. Um, and we'll talk a lot more about the desktop and what you're seeing, but this is basically what you see in the desktop too. It's pretty much the same thing. And notice this really nice notebook kind of environment for the example. So we do this exactly the exact thing to create our examples. Um, we'll spend more time talking about some of the specifics, but I'm just going to hit the big green run button so we can run the entire script. And that way we can see some of the main points I think that we wanted to hit on about MATLAB. One thing, we're creating data in this example. In our main documentation or our main demo, we're going to be bringing data in. So, there's lots of different ways to handle it, but I think this is an important reminder of some of the fundamentals. MATLAB is matrix based, right? Um,
Yep.
Matrix laboratory. So we tend to use arrays, vectors, even a one by one, or just the object is a one by one. So it's just something to really keep in mind. Especially you might get some errors where it says dimension mismatches and things, and it's just one good thing to keep in mind. The other thing, like Kevin was mentioning, very excited about these live editor tasks. I'm gonna expand this so you can see. You can embed these into scripts and then just change as you go and do some of these. First, I choose one without an error or with an error. But this is very interactive and a wonderful thing to share, especially when you're collaborating or when you're working with different kinds of examples. Great way to get started. You can see there's so many for different types of tasks, live editor tasks. Get it? Um, so we're going to be doing things like outliers and missing data and things like that. So you can see kind of combine your code and little apps for doing this kind of stuff. There's also code here too, if you prefer. It's not just a point and click environment. All the mostly plotting code, but the code is here for you know, I guess for sharing and for doing however you prefer. So
And yeah, we're going to see a lot of this actually in our own example. So Heather, you want to jump back to that?
absolutely,
Let's set
yeah,
that
let's
up. Maybe go back to
sure.
the PowerPoint slide. So this particular example, I like it because it's got a lot of data, and it's about something that I think everybody can sort of appreciate. It's storm event data. It comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it spans 40 years, so there's a lot to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring some of this data in, and then we're going to start to look at it. We'll explore it. Maybe if you can go to the next slide, Heather. We'll do some analysis. We'll look at, for example, how often storm events are happening, perhaps the costs or of the damage that they cause, and identify the most costly one. And towards the end, what we're going to try and do is take all of that data and build a predictive model and see how well we can, estimate future events and their costs. So that's kind of at a high level what we're going to do. So let's actually jump back into desktop MATLAB
Yeah.
and maybe start from the beginning. Just bring some of the data right in.
Absolutely. I was like, how long do we have for all this?
I think we only have about a half hour, so we're gonna have to go kind
Yeah.
of quick.
So, but I think we'll stick to our plan and really just get everybody started and, talk through a lot of the techniques and pause and sort of reflect along the way. So I opened MATLAB. This is the default layout. I know I was sort of jumping or scrolling and doing some different things. So maybe we should pause and talk about what you're seeing. Also, I talked quickly. I just showed this MATLAB online. It's also important to remember, you can use MATLAB anywhere on any operating system. I have my handy Linux machine back there running at Mac, uh, any cloud platforms, you can find all of that too. So it's not just your laptop at your house. Um, also, so I clicked on this. This is sort of your default layout, what you probably see in a lot of examples, but you can always like move things around pretty much if you click on the window, you can drag it around. If you double click, it'll expand it. You'll see me doing a lot of this. And, one thing, of course, is, you need to be able to find your examples. So this is a folder browser here, just like any other, Windows kind of system. And I am in the right folder. And these things are grayed out. So that was one thing people will ask right away. I'll get an error about I can't load this data or something. Um, it needs to be on what we call the search path. So, I have a handy project here that sets everything up, but you also could very easily just right click and add and remove things to the path. And anything that you're in, if you're in that directory, everything's there and you can see it's sort of, grayed out. Um, that's about it for pointers. Oh, one more. People always ask about dark mode or fuchsia mode or something like that. The preferences window has a lot of options for changing the colors and things, and you can go back for the sake of example. But you can really customize this. It's really helpful for just making your MATLAB however you want it. I think that's kind of the key here. All right.
All right.
Let's get into this weather data. Whew. Notice I just double clicked. I think that's one of the important things too. You don't really just have to start typing and coding. You can just, a lot of times, especially with files, you can just click right on it and start exploring.
Yeah, and the import tool is really a great way to start because it gives you a nice preview of the data, and you
Yep.
can really get an idea of what it is before you actually bring it into MATLAB and start working with it.
Yep. So exactly like here, this is a bit. This is a subset of the which is why it's called subset. But it's only just excluding some of the columns that we weren't going to look at in this example. So it's otherwise messy, trust me. So we have the ability, Kevin mentioned this is one of our favorite examples because it has pretty much every data type that you encounter whenever you're working with data or making it up. So we'll talk about these in a little bit more detail, of course, point you to lots more resources. But categorical, that's going to be, we can see already there are several high wins, so those are categories. That's a good way to represent it. Dates and times, that's date time. Pretty sensible. I don't think you need to take a course on that one to figure it out. That one could be tricky. Kevin and I were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
K for thousands and M for millions, or maybe even B for billion. So there could be different ways we want to deal with this. We could bring it in as text. We'll work on that later. I think for now we'll just bring in some numbers and try to start exploring. And then we have our latitude, longitude, and this is my favorite. I'm going to be so tempted to get into this one, but we have free text from a human typing it in. So I was trying to get a preview of it, but I'll show it. It's also good to see that if you click out of it, it's okay. You don't have to start all over again. You can just type in the range, even just one. I should probably mention these yellow things too, just people's eyes might be drawn to it. This is replacing anything that's empty. You can also change, you can add some conditions and things like that, but it's just using not a number. That's NaN, which we'll talk about later. That's another common one whenever you're working with sensors and any data. All right.
All right,
So
let's get this
let's go
data
for
into
it.
MATLAB.
Hit the big check mark. Go for it. This is a pretty big file, 57,000 rows, but I've been able to handle quite a bit. Also, we mentioned about the code and the app. This is something we'll probably talk about, I don't know, 100 times maybe. But you often have the ability to generate the code, and so I think especially whenever you're working in science engineering, you want to explore and poke around and then repeat it for all the different years of data that we have. So we could generate a script, and this really has a lot of stuff here, but the read table function is the thing that's doing all the. So this is good to show the different options, but it's being completely clear about what you did. So that was one thing. It doesn't. It's not as scary as it looks whenever you're looking at
Right.
this. Like, oh my gosh, do I have to learn all this?
Yeah, and over time, you'll get familiar with the various function calls that are available to pull in different data. But to get started, the import tool
Yep,
will help you do it interactively and really help you learn what some of those functions are.
exactly. And speaking of functions, I just wanted to point out too, like, we're going to be showing the command line, we're going to be showing scripts, kind of line by line. We also could capture this in a function so that we could just call it later. And that way, in this case, it was hard coded to wherever I saved this today. Um, but when we want to share it with somebody else, we don't want to have that hard coded. So we could pass it in. Also, because I just love it, there's a refactor tool. So you could also, I think in the spirit of changing, exploring phase to, repeating your code phase, I think that's a really handy thing to remember. We have a lot of things to help you as you move along, different phases of exploration and programming.
All right, so let's take a look at our data.
Let's, and I just double clicked on it. I think, and this is kind of one of my favorite things about MATLAB. I've used a number of programming languages in time, but none that I can just look at data and sort things and plot things, especially, when you're working with stuff like this, right? So, let's go ahead. Let's just sort it. Oh, and once again, notice that just popped up magically. This is really helpful. You can kind of keep exploring and poking around. Let's do a plot. Let's see. This is probably a good one. Good one. This is a big data set for one, and it's not continuous, kind of like we saw with that other example in the doc, where you have like temperature data or something. We have sort of an event at this time and then at this time. So something like a stem plot maybe isn't the best way to do it. Um, we also, one of the things that we wanted to uh, explore was our event frequency, right? So if we look at this is our categorical data, we could create a histogram, that's one way to do it. Uh, word cloud is more fun. It's easier to see immediately. And so this is really just to kind of show the number of options and how easy it is to just explore, even if you've never heard of a plot before.
Yeah, these are great because you get that quick sense of what's available in the data.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
and then as Heather was pointing out, it's great because you're doing this interactively when you're getting started, but you're learning as you go because the commands are being echoed, um, and you can see
exactly.
the actual function call.
Exactly. One more I wanted to just do for the sake of, well, a lot of nans here. We're going to have to come back to that one.
Yeah.
But let's not worry about it for right now. Um, I also, I will pause and mention I'm using a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So I'll try to point those out as I go along, but we can send you some cheat sheets to help. But I'm just selecting control and then the column or the variable that I want to plot, right? So let's see. We want to see what the damage cost is and how fun. You can see all the plots changing. So you don't have to think about it ahead, like what plots are going to be good for this kind of data. The hard work is done. This is the fun part. So, ooh, all right, geo bubble. Oh yeah, if you mouse over it, it's gives you some documentation too. That's a lot of stuff. Um, but this
All
is
right.
great for exploring. So you can see actually there's a lot of zeros. We might want to extract, the ones that are greater than
Yeah, we're
zero.
definitely going to have to subset this data at some point.
Yeah.
With
And ooh,
more.
that was a water spout and a thunderstorm wind. That was also why the legend didn't show up. I can force it. Let's make it happen. Also, again, just click on things. It's all right there for you. Don't be afraid. So clearly, we only got to the Fs. So we can do some work on our categories and try to combine some, clean those up a bit. But this is a part of the process that's so important. You don't even know what you're working with yet, but you can try to get a sense just
Yeah.
by clicking around. Bubble chart. Look at different. I should have done this one first because it's another good way to look at the clusters of data and the different categories and how they're grouping together.
So maybe we should segue to building a script. How can we take some of this initial work and then start to get into the live editor and have a
Yeah,
script?
that is a good idea because we've done a lot of cool things, right? We just did all these nice analyses. We want to save it. Clearly, it's saved. If you just hit the up arrow, there's our command history. And if you highlight what you want, this is just an easy, quick way to do it. You can just create a script right from here. Of course, you could go to the drop down and say new, but who has time for
Yeah, let's
three clicks?
reuse what we've got.
Exactly. So, and again, this is kind of where I tend to use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So I'll at least pause and talk about some of this. Because with a live editor, unlike a plain text kind of editor, you have a lot of options for markdown. I want to add our title, let's say frequency of events, and then we can add some description. Uh, if we want to just run it, we'll just repeat all those steps that we did. I was really going fast through this whenever we were in MATLAB online. But it's just so helpful whenever you're trying to explore on your own or you're sharing with others because you can change the view, you can zoom and pan and things like that. Right, right there as you're going. So could have even just started with this. I didn't have to start with the command window. Get back to this bubble chart. I'm going to look because I think these are all the clusters. Again, it didn't show the
Yeah.
legend, but it is showing the code. So again, kind of same spirit. We can just explore and capture it as we did. There are those nans again. They're always after us. Um, missing data, right? So let's actually work with some missing data. I'm going to add some space here. All right. So let's look at our data. I just keep saying the word data. Um, another thing to note here, you see all these nice things popping up as I type. Very handy. You can turn it off if you don't like it, but I love it. It's actually showing the doc. So let's just look at this in the live editor.
So this is our data set. We've
Yep.
got the 57,000 rows. All right.
Yeah. Those are times. And just like we saw with the variable editor, whenever we were outside of the script, you can just use the drop down, especially here. Maybe we only wanted to look at, one type of event. Um, but here, maybe we could even sort of, so that, or, select just the, some bigger than one. Um, there's our nans again. Nice
All right.
options for that. And
Now notice as Heather's changing her options there, the code changes as well. So it's reflecting the actions that you're taking. So you're doing things interactively, and we're showing you the code that corresponds to that. So it's a nice way to get going.
yeah, definitely. Let's leave those for now because I wanted to do one more thing with that. We'll update it. I'm going to save it, right? Um, and we have these nice functions. Maybe you saw it when it was popping up. It said is missing, or still missing, something like that. We saw those live editor tasks in the other one, but there's a great one for missing data. So these are ones I rely on all the time. The missing outliers, synchronizing. I don't know how I lived without that. I mean,
Yeah.
I do, but I had a
It would
lot
have
less
been
time.
painful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
All right.
So, oh yeah, let's put it on the side. I think that's very valuable. There we go. All right. So it's looking at my workspace, it's finding the subset that I want. Let's see. So I could just use one variable. We could look at all of them. Um, easier to select. We want to look at that damage cost because that's what we're predicting. We want to see what we're dealing with here. So about 11,000 missing data points for that one. All right. It's okay. We've got data from 1980, so we can definitely fill it in. But we can also decide if we want to remove them, fill them. You have all the different options. So it's so awesome with I don't have to think about that ahead of time. I can change my mind, right? And even learn about the methods, I think, as you go and see the visualization, it's just really helpful. You can also, again, you can use the functions too. It's nice to have, you saw those pop-ups, you can also use those. But I think I think the scientific process is this part here, just going back and forth and trying to explore. So I guess we did this a lot in the other script. So maybe we should just talk about that pretty quickly.
The more
So
complete one.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's,
because in the interest of time, we're going to have to move it along if we want to show everything that we've got on our agenda here.
oh yeah. Or I could just drink more coffee and talk a lot faster. How about no? So I'm gonna also just clear up my workspace. So that's just, things to keep in mind. All the data I was working with before it's here, clear it up. The DLC just got my command window all fresh and clean and ready for our new script. So well, we talked about this a little bit. We saw this in the variable editor. And we'll talk just kind of briefly about each of the ones that we're working with here. But, there's a lot of data types for what you need. And also, we have a script that goes back through all of the years instead of just latest, it goes through 1980. We're
Actually, can you just scroll up real quick, Heather? So
yeah.
the one more. So the mat file, basically all the work that we did in a previous example, we saved all of those variables to mat file. It's a MATLAB data file. And this allowed us to just get back to a clean starting point. So that's something that you could leverage as well.
Yep.
And for the purposes of demonstration, this works really well. It gets us to a nice clean starting point and lets us focus on some other topics.
Yep. And even when I'm working, I have tendency to do, subset one, subset two, subset three. Then I can
Yeah.
just save which ones I need and move on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I also just went through this pretty quickly, but the since we talked about it in the other script, we can select just the data that we want. We can update the variable names. There's a lot of functions. Reorder variables, those kinds of things. So we just gave a link to that. So the other thing too, we had the time dates and times. I think this is going to be an important thing whenever we're talking about our model, because if you have a hurricane that lasts for like 5 hours or 10 hours or something, that's going to be more expensive than a very quick one, right? So also you can just, subtract the timestamps. No big deal. It just because it's a date time, it's not some special weird thing. You can just add and subtract like we did before.
Just do the math.
Do the math. Exactly. No big deal. I guess we didn't talk too much about this, but this is just a way to access that one column that we're talking about.
Oh, right, because data is a table
Yep,
and begin timestamp is one of the columns in the table. So that's the syntax we use to pull out one column or variable.
exactly.
Good point.
And just as a quick review, let's make a magic matrix. I just wanted to point out, since we're talking about indexing, you know, generally speaking, it's row column. So if we want, say, the first row, we want the second, 24. Good year, good age. So, it's row column. If we wanted to have more, than just one, to do something like this. If we want the first and the third row, we're just making a vector. And then my favorite, you could also use this colon operator. So if you want to do something like this, I want all of them. This is 1:5. It's just making a vector. And shortcut, you can just do that. So same for the column, same for everything else. And then with tables or structures, you also have the names. So you don't have to stick to the numbers. Obviously, you can, but you can just use the names very easily. I think it makes a lot more sense when you have, this many variables. I don't want to keep counting. So that's that.
Yep.
All right, to our example. We talked about indexing these uh, storms that are lasting 30 days. Pretty easy to figure out what those are, just using some nice functions. And those are droughts. So that's you expected. A few other things that we were talking about, like combining the categories, easy functions for those. We can merge cats, remove cat. So that's kind of the spirit of things, right? Um, we did talk a little. We saw some strings going on. I won't spend a lot of time. I said it was very tempting to do that. But those K and M's, we can go back and just find those and replace them and do the right math so that everything is correct.
So just a little bit of string manipulation to identify them and then
Yep,
adjust the numbers to get to the right value, get a true numeric
exactly.
value. All
Exactly.
right.
And I have it here in a helper function. So, everything's there if you want to go back, and even a link. There's so many of those, kind of
Yeah.
all the regular expressions that you might have had to do in the past. Nice
And
function.
all these files, we'll provide them after the fact. And so hopefully the beginning part shows how you can get started, and then you can see this more complete example and go back to it as a reference uh, and use that to apply to your work as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's the idea. We couldn't possibly get through all of this in such a
Yeah.
short amount of time. Also, I just hit run to end so that I can just kind of show a few things. Um, Pulling out the avalanches. So this is looking at that free text. So I just wanted to show
Oh, that's
just
interesting.
Yeah, I really like that. It's just taking that, what person typed in. We could look at other ones. There's even well, ooh, I know. Let's make it easy. Let's make it drop down.
So what
So
goes in there?
we could type in, whichever ones like wind, some of those other ones we saw, like expensive ones like
Hail.
wildfires and things like
Yeah.
that. We already have a list though. So if we have it in our variable or in our workspace, we can just do that. So totally up to you. But this makes it so we can check, maybe you want to look at wildfires instead, no problem. We can just
Oh,
drop down.
this would be great. This actually is great when you share it with someone else and they're not familiar with your code. Interactive controls like this effectively tell them what legal values that are available to consider, and they just effectively get correct by construction code just by choosing an option that you've said is okay.
Exactly. Or spelling errors even.
Yeah.
I don't know how to spell Massachusetts, even though I've lived here for a number of years. Here's another one that we'd added to just kind of talking about that. We showed indexing, but you can also just use the slider maybe just to, look at the more expensive one. So once again, just, have a lot of options for that. And the live controls, really nice way to enrich your scripts. Oh, here's my little to do. Just I wanted to add the median. I think this is also good to show though, because here are the options I have. You can just use all
Oh,
of them.
nice contextual hints for you.
Yeah, so that's one thing too. If you're stuck, you don't always have to go to Google or go to this doc bar here, let's search bar. You can just start typing, and a lot of times you'll see things pop up right in front of your eyes, and you can just go
Yeah.
to the
Actually,
note.
can you show the clicking on the question mark when you're doing that?
Yeah, sure.
No, no, not there. In the contextual hint, because it gives you a pop-up uh,
Oh, oh, was it?
over on the left.
Oh,
Just left.
yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. That that's what I like because
That's
it puts it
great.
right at my fingertips.
Oh, yeah. I usually hit F1. I didn't even realize that. Great. Yeah, and this is just the regular old documentation page, so you can get that right away. Great. All right. So kind of just, you know, leave this to the exercise for the reader. I think, just
Yeah.
kind of more of this exploration and, fancy plotting, trying to just use different colors, different variables. So you can really see these very expensive hurricanes. Um, and then we could actually share this. Kevin and I work on this thing all the time together. So we use, GitHub and everything else, but I could make, HTML or Word doc and just, share it that way too. So also the results, again, that's
Yeah.
really, really valuable, I think, whenever you're working, collaborating, or even just on your own.
It's actually one of the nicest things about the live editor is that as you comment your code for your own purposes, you're effectively documenting it for others, and your script then just with a click of a button becomes a report for everybody else. So it's pretty
Yeah,
convenient.
absolutely. Um, the last thing we wanted to do was the prediction, right? We wanted
Yep.
to take all of the stuff that we've done, of our pre-processing and get ready and then get that damage cost. There's about 100 different ways to do it, all you can do in MATLAB. We won't go through that. We just kind of point you in the right direction. But one of the best places to start, I think, is this apps tab, right? And so
Yep.
this is a big time saver. We're going to use the regression learner, but you can see even I have like 7 different apps for machine learning, signal analysis. So this is a great place to start, especially for time saving whenever you're not sure what model to choose right away. We can then load in our training data. Here we go. So our predictor and response, like the response is what we're trying to predict. So that is our damage. And then we can select what we want to include.
All right. So what's happening here?
So right now, it's actually just plotting my data. And giving us options to choose our model. So we could choose all of them. It's usually what I do. Like, let's do all quick to train. You could use parallel if you like. I won't right at this moment, but we can just train them as we talk. So this is one of the best ways to get started. Even machine learning experts that I know from my past will rave about this. We spent I don't know how many years studying it, but in about 5 seconds, we have a good idea of what kind of models we can use. So just want to point out a couple things here. There's just a few ways to validate. Again, all right here that you can just explore. And then, like we've been talking about, you can export the model. You can generate a function to repeat all of those steps. So go for it. Done. Bam. All right. That was about what, a minute or two. And now you're a machine learning expert. And even gives us a hint on how to use it next.
Yeah. So we have lots of resources on both machine learning and deep learning. This was really meant just to be a quick flyover. If that's something you're interested in, we encourage you to go
Yeah.
explore all that content. We clearly don't have time today.
Yes. There's even a MATLAB on ramps for machine learning, deep learning, where you have a really focused course. I wanted to just show, showing off here, that I pulled all this together. I shouldn't take all the credit for it. We pulled this together into a nice app. So all those steps that we took, just drag them over. Okay, cool. Let's run it and see the fruits of our labor as a finale. It also, again, gives you an idea of what you can do. So let's see, a hailstorm in. So here's our predictions. You can see, maybe a very long hailstorm really bumps up the price.
Yeah, so behind the scenes here, behind these drop downs, we're subsetting the data, we're doing all the cleaning and pre-processing, and then behind the prediction button is that model that we just developed, all into an interactive app that you can share with others. So this is a great way to let other people effectively run your code, but do it through a really convenient user interface. And this is, with App Designer, you can create these really nice looking apps without having to know that much about it. It's drag and drop
Hey,
and connect stuff.
insulting me, Kevin. I know I am very okay with my app skills. They're very minimal. But while I was saying this, I wanted to show here. You can even share it as a web app. So if we
Yeah,
were proud, we do have this running somewhere on the web. Um, and even we don't have to share it on the web. We can just share it with our team, um,
yeah,
just like a MATLAB app. So that's a
yeah. I think that's
pretty
about it. I think you need to.
comprehensive view of. Oops, go back here. Pretty comprehensive view of what you can do in MATLAB. I think the MATLAB page probably is a great
Yeah,
place to send them.
yeah. If you're looking to get some more resources, if you just Google MATLAB and go to the product page, there's information there. But right in the top nav there, there's a getting started link, and from there, there's a video right at the top that steps through a different example. It's just another way to kind of get familiar with the MATLAB environment. And then right below that is the on-ramp that Heather mentioned. And this is a more guided tutorial type environment to kind of teach you some of the basics. And then below that,
Yeah,
yeah, we got more doc links and examples and whatnot.
yeah, it's great. Also, the file exchange in the community. Even you learn a lot from your peers, right? So you can find lots of examples on GitHub on file exchange, and we'll share those links with you too.
And if you don't have access to MATLAB yet, links here as well to help you do that, perhaps through a trial.
Yeah,
So, so hopefully this was helpful to kind of give you the quick overview of MATLAB as well as directions to go to help you get started. And
yeah,
we wish you well. Good luck.
yeah. Thanks so much. Thank you.